We're very pleased to be here in Australia. Very pleased to have done the press conference. This is my daughter, Kara.
Hello.
And her friend, Catherine. Come on in, Catherine. And we're proud of the Albanian community here in Australia. Very proud that they haven't forgotten their brothers and sisters in Kosovo. Motve Vlazim Shitar in Kosovo. And I'm delighted to be here to raise the public awareness levels in the press and with government officials and with the people of Australia about the real situation in Kosovo today, which I just described in a press conference as really another form of apartheid. I said that apartheid is alive and well in Kosovo. They may be dismantling it in South Africa, but they haven't started dismantling it in Kosovo today. With that, I'm pleased to be here, pleased with the hospitality of this great group of people, and take all those wonderful faces here. And we're delighted to now join this group for lunch in this beautiful city of Melbourne. Follow Mandela, sure.
Thank you, thank you.
Also, I am bringing the greetings of Albanians from New Zealand. And we are jointly together here with our brothers in Australia and America, and we are very proud to have a leader as Joseph DioGuardi, who is leading all Albanians all over the world. And as I have said at the beginning of the year, that not only Joseph DioGuardi, but also the American congressmen and senators that support in our cause for freedom of Kosovo will have their names engraved in golden letters. As we never forget our President Wilson in 1913, who was for independence of our nation. And we are very proud that President Joseph DioGuardi is doing this wonderful job through his friends in Congress and outside Congress and Senate of the United States. And on this occasion, I would like to thank also Senator Bob Dole, who has been forefront with our cause, and he has given us the support that we will never ever forget for generations.
Well, let me say this. Thank you so much, Parliament there at Shum, for those wonderful comments. We Albanians have to do everything we can for Kosovo today. History has given us a great opportunity, both in Kosovo and I believe in Tirana. And if we now come together, and work every day, bit by bit, not being confused by all of the propaganda we see, not being depressed by the fact that we're not doing so much right away, because it's the history of Albanians that we accomplish a lot, but we do it a piece at a time. And then someone said more bahat kala. So we have to not forget our history, and we have to proceed to put each block in place so that we build a strong foundation that will never be, again, taken away by another group. And we know the problems that we've had with the Ottoman Turks 500 years ago and the Serbs today. And let me end by saying those great words from Bishop Fanoli, but I changed them a little bit. And I now say, Moski Frika seke vlazavit ne Amarika.
First, I'd like to ask you what your impressions have been so far of Australia generally and the Albanian community here.
My impression of Australia is simply this, that it is a pluralistic society that has allowed its diverse population to be who they want to be. Much like the United States of America, the people of Australia, and certainly this applies to the Albanian population here, can do two things and succeed. They can dream and they can work, and the reason why they are successful is that Australia allows the opportunity for them to fulfill their potentials as human beings and for their families. This is what does not exist today in Kosovo, and that's why I make the point, because in Kosovo today, a communist regime does not allow the people to be who they want to be. As a matter of fact, they are trying to assimilate that culture, because today in Kosovo, 7% of the population, Serbs, control 93% of the population, Albanians, so that there are no Albanian judges, no control by Albanians of any of the institutions there right now, and the process is deteriorated to the point where we need to cry out, and that was the title of my editorial that you just heard, to reasonable people around the world. Certainly the United States of America, the Senate and the Congress, the European Parliament, and you may have heard, and I'll get into this later, we had a resolution passed there on Friday, the United Nations, Amnesty International, the Helsinki Watch, the Australian Parliament. We need the voices of everyone to say that the Albanian population in Yugoslavia need to be treated as equals with all the other people in Yugoslavia, and that's within the Constitution of Yugoslavia, because that's what it guarantees.
And in the United States, and I believe you're currently on the board of the US Congressional Human Rights Foundation. What work have you done on their behalf or spoken on their behalf?
Well, earlier this year, I went to the funeral of Enver Hadre. You know, he was a civil rights activist for Albanians who was literally assassinated on the streets of Brussels by the Serbian secret police UDBA. It was reported in the Brussels papers at that time, but now we have seen it in the Belgrade papers that the wife of one of the assassins kind of spilled the beans. It's a very embarrassing episode for the Serbian authorities, but it's clear now that Mr. Hadre was assassinated. I was invited by the family to eulogize him at his funeral, and while I was there, I decided to visit the European Parliament and the European Commission, and I had press conferences at both, and we've got great leaders in Europe. Gani Azemi was the one who arranged, much like you did, for the press conferences, and the thought came out that, you know, when Mr. Hadre died, he died with a list on him of 28, I believe, individuals who were killed in the last demonstrations earlier this year, and he never got to deliver that list to the Special Rapporteur on the UN Commission for Human Rights. So I thought it would be appropriate for me to take that list, literally from his family's hands, who took it from his body, and deliver it myself. So I went to the United Nations to deliver that list to the Special Rapporteur, and they received me well. I had a press conference there, and I believe that did a lot in order to raise the awareness levels of what is going on in Kosovo today.
I believe also you were recently in Copenhagen, and there was a considerable amount of success both with the awareness of the issue in Kosovo, and also the US ambassador there had something to say.
Well, the purpose of that visit, and I brought Dr. Eva Brantley with me, who works with us at the Albanian American Civic League. You may have heard about Eva. She's blind. She's been blind since 19, but yet she not only has a law degree and her master's in law, she has her PhD doctorate in international law, specifically human rights, and she works very closely with me, and she's traveled with me to Kosovo. In fact, she was there recently when they declared their independence as an autonomous unit within the Federation and Confederation of Yugoslavia, and was arrested and questioned for 6 hours. But Eva and I went to Copenhagen because the Helsinki Commission was meeting there for 3 weeks, and they had a very important mission, because that meeting was an historic meeting. It was designed to deal with the definition of the rights of ethnic minorities within other countries. And I felt it was very important that, as the president of the Albanian American Civic League, that I make the case for ethnic Albanians in Yugoslavia. Certainly Kosovo, but all ethnic Albanians in Yugoslavia. And we went there with great success. We met with the Canadian delegation, the Hungarian delegation. I tried to meet with the Yugoslavian delegation. As a matter of fact, guess who was the only delegation that refused to meet with me? It was the Yugoslavian delegation. They don't want a dialogue in Kosovo. They don't even want a dialogue in Copenhagen. And that's what the Helsinki process is all about, to talk. Because where there's talk, there's hope. And my feeling is the reason why they don't want to talk is that they absolutely know that they are on the wrong side of the issue, because they are a communist regime and the Kosovars want democracy. And we know that Ibrahim Rugova has signed up 700,000 people out of the 1,800,000 Albanians as part of the Democratic Alliance. 150,000 of those people were card-carrying communists who have burned those cards, threw them in the bin to become part of the Democratic Alliance. And that's the issue in Kosovo, and that's what I went to Copenhagen to say to our ambassador from the United States, Max Kappelman, and to these delegations, that don't believe the Serbian propaganda machine. This is not an issue of fundamentalism, because if it were, you wouldn't have 1,500,000 Slovene Christians supporting the Kosovars. This is not an issue of terrorism, because if it were, why are only Albanians being killed and not one Serb? And this is not an issue of separatism, because why would Albanians want to separate and go to Albania at this point, which is as problematic as anything else? The issue is these people want to be full partners in the vision called Yugoslavia. This state was created as kind of a partnership of many diverse ethnic groups, and the Constitution says that all those ethnic groups will be treated equally. The Kosovars are not being treated equally, and I had to bring that message to Copenhagen, along with some examples of how they're not being treated equally, as a matter of fact, how they're being brutalized. And one of the things I brought with me were the pictures, the photos of that 22-year-old Albanian soldier who was serving in the Yugoslav army and was sent back from Belgrade or from Zagreb in a coffin to his family with instructions, do not open the casket because it is treason if you do. He died in the army. But this brave family opened it, took the pictures, gave them to me. I blew them up and brought them to Copenhagen. And if you saw these pictures, you would see that there was no way that this young soldier could have taken his own life, but yet the Serbian doctors in their death certificate said he had taken his own life by turning an automatic weapon on himself in the rifle range. And if you looked at the body, you would see that he was beaten brutally on the back, on the face. He had bullet wounds in the back. He had 3 bullet wounds in the heart. He had 1 behind the ear. There is no way for anyone to kill themselves that way. And now there are 40 mothers in Kosovo saying, well, now my sons came back that way. I would like to open the coffins too. And they are working right now as a chapter of the Democratic Alliance. All we as Albanians want for the Kosovars, and all the Albanians want, is to be treated as everyone else is treated in the state of Yugoslavia, but that is not the way they're being treated. So you might say that my mission as I travel to Copenhagen, as I travel to the United Nations, whether it's in Geneva, whether it's in in New York, as I travel to the European Parliament, whether it's in Strasbourg or in Brussels, as I travel to the European Commission in Brussels, and as I recently traveled to Houston when they had the economic summit, I go there with one message. All the Albanians want is the right of self-determination, the right of self-governance, and they want equality with all other groups in the country of Yugoslavia. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here. I think it's interesting that we find the opportunity to come to a major university in Melbourne. It's certainly a great pleasure to me. I spoke at 4 universities last year in the United States. One on human rights, that was Cornell, and the other 3 on fiscal irresponsibility in Washington. Because, you know, we have a big budget deficit. That was NYU, Fordham, and Duke. And I kind of like the idea of being able to go back home and say that I lectured at Melbourne University. It sounds important. And I understand this is a great university. Thank you for coming. The issue of human rights is not just an issue that affects ethnic Albanians around the world. The world today has become a complicated place, but at the same time, it's become a place where people who are ethnic minorities can have a fair hearing. This is not the world of 500 years ago when the Ottoman Turks ran over much of Europe. It's not. This is last February when I went to eulogize an individual who died because he was a civil rights activist in ethnic Albania. And I was impressed with what I saw there. I was impressed with the ability, or with the fact that I could walk around the halls of the United Nations, and this was the UN Commission on Human Rights that it convened in Geneva, and much like I do in Congress, could sit down with the heads of various delegations and make my case to them about the plight of ethnic Albanians in Yugoslavia. And I was impressed with the work of our own ambassador, Morris Abrams, at that time, and used the U.S. delegation as a way to get to others. Well, we've got a report last week on Yugoslavia, and here in Australia you have an amnesty group within your parliament, and I was delighted to meet with your foreign minister, Mr. Evans, and Mr. Ruddock, a member of parliament, Senator Powell, Jim Short, people who are members of this amnesty group. So you've got many groups around the world who now try to look objectively at what is going on so that ethnic minorities are protected no matter where they are. Now, you read the papers and you've seen the problems we've had with the blacks in South Africa. Now, in the 70s, there were years in which 60, 70,000 Soviet Jews would be released. And then the Soviet Union changed its tactic and began to use the Soviet Jews as political pawns. And from something like 50 to 70,000 a year, it came to the point where there was only maybe 100, 200, in some years 1,000, because they were using that issue. Well, what did the Congress of the United States do? Well, many prominent congressmen, and by the way, many of them were prominent Jews who emigrated to America, like Congressman Tom Lantos, a Hungarian Jew, a person that I've come to know who met me as a young congressman or a new congressman in 1985 and understood the plight of ethnic Albanians because he's a Hungarian and a Jew. He understood the history. As a matter of fact, he was saved from the Nazi concentration camps by Raoul Wallenberg. But Congressman Tom Lantos traveled around the world and became a leader on the Soviet Jewry issue. And as you know now today, Soviet Jews pretty much can lead the Soviet Union. Another dramatic change. I've gone to Northern Ireland, and I've seen the plight there, and the Catholics in Northern Ireland are victimized by the majority of Protestants in that area. It's an old and ancient fight. You might compare it in many ways to what is going on today between the Serbs and the Albanians, and it's hopefully one that will improve. But like the situation in Serbia, it is still one of the examples around the world where there hasn't been much progress. Now, why do I say all that? I take on the 1,000 in Sweden, and if you add them all up, then you come to America, just in the New York metropolitan area, you've got 500,000 ethnic Albanians, not even including the Arbrecht, the ones that came from Italy, much like my father did. So you've got about 14 million Jews in the world, and by some counts, 14 million Albanians. Now, all the Jews are not in Israel, and all the Albanians are not in Albania. But that's why we need the United Nations and Helsinki Watch and Amnesty International. Because when you are a dispersed nation like that, there is a great potential for you to be abused by majority controlling nationalities in the countries in which you reside. Because not every country is like the United States of America. As difficult as that issue was, where brother fought brother, literally, today you will find a Confederate flag flying on state capitals in Alabama, in Georgia, and they still carry it because of freedom of expression. That's the hallmark of our Bill of Rights. The first Bill of Rights, that you can have freedom of speech, freedom of expression. As a matter of fact, there's a big debate going on right now because the Supreme Court said that if you want to, if you really feel that the only way you can express yourself about the country in which you reside in America is to burn the American flag, guess what? It's not unconstitutional to do that. In the year 1918. Now, I've been on several talk shows here, and twice the commentator asked me, well, if it's so difficult for Albanians in Yugoslavia, why don't they go back to Albania? Not realizing that Kosovo, until 1918, was part of Albania. This is where these people live. They didn't leave Albania to come to Kosovo. They were there. In fact, let's look at the history of the Albanian people. Go back to the year 1488, when my father's people had to seek political asylum in Italy because Skanderbeg had died 20 years before in 1468, and his son, I guess he had two sons, but I believe it was one son that brought to Italy, but 20 years he tried to do what his father did and could not. And the battle was lost to the Albanians, even after Skanderbeg won every battle. And as you know, he was treated as a mystical person by the Turks because they couldn't beat him. In fact, I understand that when he died, the Turks dug up his bones and carved them into amulets because they felt some of that mystical ability to come on them. But the point is, 1488, my father's people left tens of thousands of Albanians to go across the Adriatic seeking political asylum because they didn't want to become Turks. They didn't want to become Muslims. They were Christians. All Albanians, by the way, if you don't know, were Christians in Eastern Orthodox, I guess, in those years. But religion is not an issue. I just thought I would put that forward as a historical fact. So, for how many years? 400 years, the Albanian nation was submerged within the Turkish Empire, and Albanians were brutally treated. It's a tribute to them that they did not lose their language, lose their spirit in 400 years, and maybe it's also a stroke of good luck that when the Albanians went to Italy, they found a place in which they could preserve their culture in those mountains. Because I know today there are 38 villages in Italy, Albanian villages, where they still speak Albanian first and Italian second, like my father's village, Gretchen. So it was kind of lucky for the Albanians that we had offshore, so to speak, a group of people that preserved the language the way it was. And I know that there are differences in words because while the Yugoslavs have changed some of the language, if you want to understand the way the language was spoken 500 years ago, speak to them afresh, because in those mountains in Italy, they had no reason to change. They weren't victimized by the Turks, and they kept faith with the actual language where it was 500 years. But it's basically the same language. The point is that you had a situation where the Albanian nation was submerged within the Turkish nation. And when that Ottoman Turkish Empire began to crumble, there was a scramble to kind of regain territory, redraw the map of Europe, and it was because of brave patriots, members of the League of Prisoners, that reacted against that Congress of Berlin, where, believe it or not, people like Bismarck were saying that there is no such thing as a separate Albanian culture. He forgot what had happened 400 years ago, or if he remembered, he didn't want to admit it. And literally, there are statements by Bismarck that there is no need to worry about an Albanian country because there is no such thing as a separate Albanian culture. It was almost as though he was saying they were Turks. Thank God for the League of Prisoners, and thank God for people who were like the founders of the United States of America, that because of their efforts, in the year 1912, November 28th, a flag was raised and a country called Albania emerged after all those years. It will show that if you don't get rid of the hardliners in a situation like that, then it only goes from bad to worse. So let's not leave Albania aside because it's a totally different subject than Kosovo, but I feel optimistic that the trend will continue and Albania itself, in a short period of time, will develop some kind of a social democracy. What it is, I can't tell you, but the good news is that you'll see probably by the end of the year diplomatic relations between the United States and Albania, and even hopefully the United States and Great Britain, and that was the real reason that I went to Albania to have those discussions. But shifting back to Yugoslavia, the trend obviously is for pluralistic democracy. As I said, we've seen it in Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, but we've even seen it in Yugoslavia. Now let's talk about Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was a vision to resolve the Balkan problems. And you've heard phrases like, you know, the Balkans, the Balkanizing the Balkans, or the Balkans are the flashpoint for problems of that part of Europe. In fact, the Balkans caused World War I. I believe it was the Archduke that was shot in Sarajevo that began World War I. There are a lot of nationalistic tensions in that area. And I guess Yugoslavia was one solution to the problem, trying to put these diverse ethnic groups into one entity, not a strong centralized entity, but kind of a loose federation or confederation. And it seemed to have the potential to work, much like the United States, a group of 50 states now, and Australia, which is against the United Nations Universal Declaration on Human Rights. If there's one thing the United Nations has targeted as its as one of the things to go after in the 90s is the issue of colonization and recolonization. And here you have Serbia flying right in the face of that value that is now a concern for the United Nations. So what do we have today? We have a situation in Yugoslavia where elections were recently held and the Slovenes have opted for democracy. Croatians had their elections a few months ago. They have opted for a pluralistic form of government, basically a democratic form. We now see the Bosnians going the same way, but yet the Serbs are sticking with one man, one party rule, because they have a president, Slobodan Milosevic, who has made his entire political career based on ethnic tensions within Serbia. Do you remember the millions of people he brought out on the street to chant against the Serbians, the Albanians, and how he said that on to Kosovo? In fact, he had the nerve to have a victory celebration for the Battle of Kosovo on the 600th anniversary. I believe it was June 28, 1989. Obviously, well, you know that it was a battle that was lost by the Serbs, but somehow that battle is memorialized because it identifies the Serbs with the Kosovo area. But they have forgotten that it was also Albanians that fought in that battle with them. So the point is that you've got a situation today where not only does Slobodan Milosevic feel his own political future is tied in with a communistic form of government, you've got now the new president of the collective federal government, Mr. Jovic, a Serb, because that presidency rotates, and this year it rotated to a Serb. The first thing he did in his inaugural address is say, and this is only about a month ago or so, that there's great danger that the socialist form of government in Serbia is under attack because of what's happening in Slovenia and Croatia. In other words, what he's saying is that the Serbs have to preserve a communistic form of government at all costs. Now, while that's happening, in Kosovo, a democratic alliance was formed by Dr. Ibrahim Rugova as one of the alternatives. And as of this point, he has signed up 700,000 people of the almost 2 million Albanians there. 150,000 of those people were card-carrying communists who threw their cards into the baskets in the bonfire. So here in Kosovo now, you've got a full-fledged democratic movement underway, and that flies in the face of the Serbian form.